This is a sugar beet harvest in the northern plains, Minnesota, North Dakota, Montana. The tractor in front with the yellow thing behind it is like a mower, and it runs over the sugar beet crop. The beets, of course, are the roots, and the tops are varying degrees of yellow to green. We like to see them yellow-green at harvest time. We like to see them going into a little bit of a nitrogen deficiency, because it's that way the sugar goes to the roots instead of making new tops. But they do vary across the field due to certain soil conditions. But they're chopped up, left on the soil, and then the actual beet lifting part of it tends to incorporate some of that residue, and it can be very high in nitrogen, and so it rots relatively quickly, even in these northern climates. By the spring, you can't even tell that there was a sugar beet in the field. So the tops act like a green manure, and so the work that we did with remote sensing initially was done mostly to try to predict how much nitrogen can go into the soil with that sugar beet leaf green manure. So that gives you a little bit of an update. The nitrogen requirement of sugar beet is a little bit like walking a tightrope. You need enough nitrogen to get some good tonnage, but you don't want excessive nitrogen there at all. So you need it just right. So nitrogen nutrition affects quality as well as the tonnage. The nitrogen in the tops is substantial. If you have some high-end tops that are very green and maybe you hit your chest as you're walking through the field, it can have hundreds of pounds of nitrogen per acre. And if you have the low-end tops, the really yellow ones, then you have substantially less. So rating the tops as green and not so green, or something in the middle, makes a big difference of what you could plan for the next year. And it's important to plan because the nitrogen nutrition of the rotation affects the nitrogen nutrition of the beets when you come back into beets 2, 3, 4 years down the road. So all the nitrogen has to be just right. It can't be excessive, or else the beets suffer for it when you go back around in the rotation. So a lot of field studies, I have them listed there. I'll let you look at them at your own convenience. But when we score them green and yellow-green and yellow, there's a nitrogen credit that goes on the wheat or the corn or the potatoes or whatever else you're growing the next year that you can subtract from your normal nitrogen recommendation. So this is basically how we do it. This is a satellite image on the left-hand side. This is probably Landsat 5 image. This is an aerial photograph of the same field in the same year. This was a beet field. The black area here is just a little drown-out spot that they've since drained. But there are patterns in the field, and we translated those patterns. Gosh, this has been 10 or 12 years ago, so the methods we used are a little bit archaic compared to what we use today. But we can and have delineated areas of the field based on the imagery, and then reduce the rates of nitrogen based on the nitrogen we expect to get out of the beet tops the coming year. So when we tested it, we want to make sure that, because putting 80 pounds of nitrogen on for wheat is not a normal practice. It's usually up around that 150 pounds of N rate. And so the farmer, of course, was nervous. But the yields at the end of the season showed that we were right on target. There wasn't any differences between where we reduced the nitrogen rate and where we left it alone based on the beet top color. So he became a believer, and so did many other growers in the region. The adoption of the satellite imagery has been very steady by the beet growers over the years. Currently, there's somewhere around 150,000 acres, which is more than half of the sugar beet acres in North Dakota and Minnesota that use the satellite imagery to reduce their nitrogen recommendations. And I think the reason a lot of them don't, the ones that don't, is because sometimes the crop following sugar beets is soybean, and so they don't care. But if they're planting potatoes or corn or spring wheat or barley afterwards, of course they do care, and that's where the adoption is. Dollars per acre. American Crystal is the largest co-op in the region that grows and processes the sugar, and this is the mean of the 2003 and 2007 survey data, and they show a substantial advantage of their zone sampling based on that satellite image bead color compared to just the old uniform application. So the whole zone management of nutrients is very common and supported by the industry and supported by the data.